So, Stuart, when you talk about people going onto a job board and they download a template, or they're told to Google it and they get a template, what's the danger of doing that? Why is that not good advice?
I think it's always good to be up to date with how a CV should look and feel. And clearly there are stylistic and legal differences now, and indeed safety differences from many, many years ago. So what we don't need to see is your name, your address, your telephone number, your age, your family's upbringing, your national insurance number, because even if you don't get the job, guess what? You'll get scammed and find your bank account cleared out very quickly. What we do need to see is the basic information. So there's some real-time information that needs to be on a CV. So name, email address, and a contact telephone number. That is it. That's all you need to put on there. The tendency currently is then to move into a personal statement. And that's driven through schools, colleges, universities, and actually the majority of businesses that offer career advice will talk about a personal statement. I'm not one of those, and I'll explain why. In 30 years, I've not seen a personal statement that has been truly objective and verifiable. And when I say objective, I mean achievement driven. So I've seen lots of personal statements that say, I am an ambitious, highly motivational individual who can lead teams to great success. Well, who isn't? Or people within the army sector talking about how great they are at managing teams. Yeah, who isn't? But what you don't have is fact. What you do have is an essay written about, could be any number of individuals across the UK. And worse still, when you go to a template, if you're lazy, and there are an awful lot of lazy job seekers, they will download the template with the personal statement in there and just change a few lines. So I would say 8 out of 10 applicants will work brilliantly as part of a team and as an individual. And whether you're an HR function, or whether you're a line manager, or whether you're a recruiter, you will get to a point, probably at number 3, where you'll be hitting the delete button as you see that phrase come up on a CV when it's line 3, 4 or 5, and therefore your application gets dumped. So by not being individualistic, by not thinking on your own 2 feet, you're negating your opportunity of success with that job. And that's through laziness, really. That's through just not taking any responsibility for your search. But there does need to be some responsibility with the education establishments and the third sector establishments that are advising people on looking at careers. I was on various education establishment websites yesterday, and the majority of them had set templates they were pushing graduates to write their CV, all of which have a personal statement, all of which then have key skills, all of which then move into some form of career history, but nothing about achievements. So actually what we're creating is a workforce that isn't aspirational, that is superficially skill driven, that can write great essays. Well, brilliant, that's not going to work in the marketplace. It just isn't going to work, and it doesn't get people into the types of roles that they have the ability to do. And in many ways, a little bit like my absolute hatred of KPIs in the workplace, what we end up doing is suppressing any creativity. So we just box people in, And whether that be, well, certainly it happens within the secondary school system through to the college system. And I fear that my own experience with my family, the youngsters, 19, 22-year-olds coming out of university are being boxed into being very average and not aspirational. And I think that's a crying shame.
So if you were advising somebody of that age, somebody who's looking for that first job, post-school, post-university, perhaps they haven't had that first step on the career ladder, what sort of things can they do to put on their CV? Because obviously they won't have a career history. So you said you want to talk about achievement and skills in a different way. What sort of things would you advise them to do?
Well, I think the first thing, I think if you ask a 17 to 24-year-old what their achievements are, there's a significant percentage of those individuals that won't believe that they've really achieved things. And they have, whether they be educational or sporting or charitable or vocational, everybody has achieved and everybody has achievements. But for whatever reason, and I think COVID will have made this worse, there is a generation that almost have achievements capped off. There's almost a fear of saying, this is what I've done and this is what I've done well, for fear of being knocked back, or for fear of being individualistic, or for fear of not fitting the expected mould. So when I start, the first thing I talk about is purely achievements. So go away and tell me, and this is irrespective of level of career, go away and tell me, if I were interviewing you, my first question is, tell me where you're different from your peer group. Give me 6 examples of key achievements. And on that basis, the CV will be built. Now, there may be lots of other detail, but actually those 6 things are the things that you build your whole process of application for that particular job around. Again, let me explain, because there's some psychology around it. If you get interviewed for that job that you've applied for, having written that CV, invariably the interviewer will be basing the questions on those achievements. So if you're cute, then and they are real achievements, it can support you inordinately in the process, particularly if you're a nervous interviewer. But what I see at the moment is just the same, without being overly critical, garbage. I'm recruiting a marketing role at the moment for a company. I must have seen 200 CVs and I haven't interviewed a person yet. It's a creative marketing role where the ability to write very simple prose about a Microsoft package is the thrust of the job. And 50-60% of the jobs have got typos in them. Probably 20 or 30% have got grammatical errors in them. So without going into the detail of whether or not the person has any marketing experience, you're rejecting those people already. Nobody really has put a covering letter with it, a covering email with applications, and it's a creative marketing job. So, so I've wasted, let's say, 200 CVs, 2 hours looking at applications that are meaningless. And if you have that process, and let's remember what a recruitment consultant's job is. If you see that CV 4 or 5 times, and it's the same CV with the same mistakes, you'll align that to a certain name, and you're switching off subliminally that individual's application every time you see it. Because actually, that I'm not going to make my target by looking at that CV. My job is to make my target. My job, it's the company that pays my employer that pays me. And all the rubbish that goes with it, I don't want anything to do with them. And whatever the individual with the softer skills tell you about the way the market should be, that's not the way the market is. There isn't a recruitment business in the UK or probably globally that will say you haven't hit your target, but you're really nice to people, so well done, you can keep your job.
Stuart, tell me a bit more about if you're job searching and you're not sure whether you need a headhunter to be involved, a recruitment agency to be involved, or someone like yourself that's a career coach. What are the pros and cons of those approaches, or should you mix it anyway?
Well, a headhunter is really specific in the sense that headhunters or search firms will work at the senior end of the marketplace. And unless this is changed, it may have changed slightly with the more depressed marketplace. Search companies will tend to work on a retained basis, so they will be retained by a company to fill a certain senior job. So they'll either headhunt or advertise, and then they'll work specifically on that, towards that shortlist. The exceptional search consultants will place more than one person from their shortlist into organisations if the market dictates. But what you will tend to see is that search consultants will work on that set assignment, and if you're not applicable for that assignment, then your CV goes into a file to be rejected. And then when you get to the shortlist phase, if you are not applicable for second interview, you go into a file to be rejected, and so on and so forth. Recruitment consultants, again, probably split into two groups, I would say. There's the mid-market, and then there's the high street recruiters. And inevitably in this sort of marketplace, the high street recruiters will migrate to a more senior level because any fee is a fee, and the mid-market will slip into the high street marketplace because revenue is revenue. And there is a greater emphasis upon the contracting marketplace and the blue collar marketplace if you look at the high street, I would suggest. My experience is in the mid-market, where there is a blend of retained business and contingency business, where an individual will make a certain number of placements or fill a certain number of jobs on a monthly basis. And there are two ways of working. And there's the antiquated way, which is probably the way I was trained, which is about placing candidates into jobs. And then there is filling jobs. And whilst that may sound the same, there are subtle differences around it. The filling job scenario tends to be, let's pull as many jobs as possible I can create and just try and fill anything I can. And that sounds, that's very simplistic. But the placing candidates is about building a relationship, or more of a relationship, with your customer, with your candidate, and ensuring that you have an absolute match. And they're probably much lower ratios in terms of how you work. And this is my opinion. I'm sure it will be counted in the marketplace. Irrespective of where you sit, I think it is advantageous to build a strong relationship with your recruitment agency. And I've read lots of stuff on LinkedIn recently criticising recruiters because I'm applying for jobs and I'm not getting a response. Well, you're probably one of 300 or 400 people applying for the job. Is it an appropriate job? Does your CV say that you can do the job? Can you work as part of a team as well as an individual? Are you number 75 on the list of the person that's reviewing the CVs that sees that? At which point your CV will not be shortlisted, because guess what? I have no interest in whether or not you can work as part of a team or an individual, because you've just downloaded that template. So that doesn't tell me, or doesn't give me the indication that you are a high quality individual. So you have to take some responsibility for building the rapport with your recruiter. And going onto LinkedIn and bemoaning the recruitment sector isn't going to do anything about building your relationship with the recruiter. What job seekers should bear in mind is that if a recruiter does not achieve their target, they will get fired. There's a huge turnover in staff in the recruitment sector. I think there were 8,000 new recruitment companies set up in 2019, 2020. That is no surprise. It's a 40 billion turnover marketplace. If somebody wants to earn 30 grand a year, then they can do it doing recruitment from their back bedroom, probably by placing candidates that they know well. And one can go on and talk about value in that and how you create value, but that's not for this conversation. But if you don't build a rapport with that recruiter, or if you bug that recruiter, I saw that on one of the university sites, it advised that you should phone your recruiter 3 times a day to chase a response to a job application. Guess what? You will never get through. You will never get through, and your CV will never be looked at again. You'll be one of those painful candidates that nobody wants to talk to. And there have been those candidates since I went into the recruitment sector in 1985, 86. And I can tell you the names from 1985, 86 because they're ingrained in my mind. And there was a team of 8 of us, and if certain people phoned, having phoned already 10 times that week, it was the junior person that took the call. But it didn't get them a job quickly. So building a rapport, applying for jobs that are applicable to you, making sure your CV makes sense, will help you in building that sort of relationship with a recruiter. What a career coach gives you is, or what a career coach should give you, is the support for you to make an objective decision on your career. It is not my job as a career coach to make your decisions for you. It's my job to help you see the light of what is the recruitment sector, to support you through the challenges that you have in terms of making your decisions, to support you in really clearing your mind so that you can truly maximise the potential that you have, for you to understand what your achievements are, for you to be able to build on those achievements and work a route out for yourself that enables you to be truly fulfilled in the workplace and have a sensible work-life balance. So, really matching apples with apples. Don't come and say you want to be the best corporate lawyer in the world and work 7 hours a day, because those two things don't go together. But there are people that think that's the case. There are people that work in the provinces that think that working 9 to 5 means they're a great corporate lawyer. And they may well be technically a great corporate lawyer. But a great corporate lawyer is billing tens of millions of pounds. So again, it's horses for courses. So that's what a career coach does. The benefit that I have as a career coach is 34 years recruiting as well. So whilst the challenge for me is not trying to influence somebody in making the decisions because of the experience, I have the experience that means that I can see the pitfalls. So if somebody is going to make a real glaring mistake, or a glaring mistake around the legalities of a career move, then I can give the appropriate advice. So there is some benefit to grey hair and being overweight. But it's not my job to make the decision for the individual. In fact, it's no recruiter's job, despite some of the actions, to make an individual's decision for them.